emerging, because nowadays people talk about job in connection with elections. Because we have everything except job in Indian context. Many things happening here. Creative milieux. There is Indian, I think, Super League. That's quite entertaining. Football there. Variety of creative things being orchestrated, organized. It's quite an interesting milieu. But many things happening, but except job. On one hand, that's happening. The other side, if you see, last 10 years, 15 years, development or trajectory. Gross enrollment rate, that means it shows proportion of people who participate in higher education process in the age group of 18 to 23, 22, and so on. That rate has gone up. One point of time it was just 1/6. Now it's close to 1/4, or it's going to go beyond it. But then who's going to capture these people? In value chains. It's very tricky, value chains. Because value chains, fundamental principle is some economies, some geographies, some people who are in the vertical structure of market, they get it. They capture all the value. So it's for sure that wage is not going to increase. Wage is going to go down rather, real wage. Of course, even in registered manufacturing, real growth of real wage is discernibly low. It may be hovering around 0 or very, very low figure. And hardly any connect with productivity. We don't see any conversion of productivity to real wage. It's also pretty low, for sure. So, why that's happening? That's human engagement crisis. And human engagement crisis also says other stories. We do have isomorphing of vertical structures again and again, to families, to gender relations. I think recent data really corroborate these points. When it comes to ownership of unorganized business enterprises in Indian geography, this has been historically stable. When it comes to proprietorship, proportion of female-owned enterprises, establishment, is very low. It's not even 10%. That means the veil of morality, patriarchy, that's still there, hugely there. And of course, this is also applicable to social structure, to the rigidity of social structure. When it comes to the business data, it's very, very clear. So I guess, and then it's very clear, if at least one member from outside the family, or if it is hetero-gender, it's quite clear from the data that surplus of business tends to go up. So that's an interesting thing. In vertical structure, what happens is you have to talk alike. You have to say that you have internet connection, your fortunes improve. And all should talk alike. So this seems to be a Gordian knot, I guess. I guess this also calls for very progressive development analytics that combines economic, social, political, cultural structures. I wish to bring some more points, friends. There are different analyses, broad terminologies, particularly 3-4 terminologies I would like to bring. One critical case is, the terminology I would like to bring to your notice is the process of structural hole. I think world over, I think people have been studying. Structural hole in the sense, 3-4 actors are in a business, but one actor regulates the tie between any two other actors. and then only through particular contractor or actor you can approach another actor. That means your access is in the hands of one or two contractors. I'm sure human engagement is in the grip of that. Because even that's quite fact, because migrant workers, because minimum wage is being manned by the state. There's no harm in that, but then one state's regulation is not valid in other states' regulation. Although we live in the digital age and so on and so forth. That's not easy. So what's happening is, in India, there are people moving around from one place to another place. Construction, for the sake of, it gets absorbed. They get absorbed in a variety of industries. Hazardous industries like leather, or other activities like construction and so on. In all these spheres, what happens is, there are structural halts. Very few people get advantage. Very few people. This is happening, so there is need for labor, but all the benefits go to a few nodes, few actors who control the value chain. So human engagement. So we have structures. State, there's a vertical structure. Market or business, there is a vertical structure. And when it comes to society, there are structural halts, a big structural halts. That is an again isomorphing of vertical structures of state and, I would say, market. Why I'm saying, I'd like to prove a point. In the case of construction, some of the decent construction providers, if you go for the auditing, I have done that auditing in Bangalore. This subcontract, they classify work into three: civil, plumbing, safety. So that's one contractor or three contractor. They further subcontract, sublease. There's no harm in subleasing. It's a smart way of doing business. But then all the formalities get tweaked. For example, in civil work, someone falls from 10th floor. The person is ideally eligible, should have gotten benefits from Compensation Act. But then that needs documents. So that's not properly done many places. So the big question is, so in this milieu, what the policy says. So I would like to give you a case, two cases. One is deep digitalization and demonetization, and skill. Then I will end. Skill is a classic case. Skill development in India. What's really shaping? I think ample times as I've been sharing in different fora that in places like Mumbai, you just need a clap to get Stanford MBA. They come over here, provided there is money back. But you don't get a certified old-age carer. Your dad suffers from chronic, Alzheimer's or something. Because, but then there are many such cases. Child carers, what's happening is, because of structural halt means the brokerage. Query ultimately reaches to human traffickers. And they supply 14 years old or 13 years old, living domestic work, who's a child. So that's, and the same structure gets repeated in corporate spaces as well. Of course, there are a few exceptions. I did a recent field work for a security agency company. I found very interesting cases of 12 years of people with 12 years of education or 10 years of education. Many of them got absorbed in staffing companies, and they have been deployed in electronic park, electronic city in Bangalore. Some companies pay something like 23,000, 24,000 for this. Some companies, a very few companies. That's not the case in some corporate hospitals elsewhere in the country, including the metropolis. The third-party workers, they just get what minimum wage says. Just, say for example, minimum wage says 8,000, they get 10,000. And the volume of emotional labor is quite huge. So I'm coming to this point, skilling. So skilling in India, for example, it was there was a convergence between what government was thinking and what market was thinking. Government wanted to say that, I think former Prime Minister and this Prime Minister as well, I mean, umpteen times they said demographic view, and they stopped saying it now. I think Monday Senior was the protagonist of the advantage of young people who are in the age group of 15 to 34, converting that to growth in India. But interestingly, what happened? Despite this long history of conscientization towards youth, advantage, and so on and so forth, there's a big issue emerging. Do we get people who are amply skilled in a variety of areas? Because one reason, one wrong understanding was the tall structure which prevailed in industry thought skill means engineering, ITI. But what about who's pursuing BA in Marathi? BA in Marathi could have been fused with a variety of disciplines, including cognitive psychology, linguistics, which is very, very critical ingredient to something like computer science. BA Marathi computer science. This is not, is a blasphemy? So we have those blasphemies because of masculinist mindset of market and state. For them, skill means going to polytechnic, engineering, and ITA. That is called skilling. So a hybrid goes, hybrid therefore emerged. It's called BVOC, Bachelor of Vocational Training. Think about someone who is pursuing BSc Maths. Can there be skill element in it? There's plenty. Or a historian, history. So what's happening is large pool of art, science, commerce, education has been left in large. Because this is a classic case. I think, and why I'm saying tall structure in the industry. Tall structure in the industry, mostly IT enabled service. The money that comes from IT enabled, if you see balance of payment account of India, it's as much as what we get from remittances of Indian, what do you call it, immigrants, Middle East immigrants. If you size it, because you don't get much money from so-called NRI who live in the northern part of the hemisphere, northern bloc countries. But Middle East people said the volume. And IT industry is, the volume from IT industry is that much only. But look at IT industry tweaked the meaning of skill. Even metallurgy, at one point of time, IT industry was trying to get even metallurgists. So they said, you finish engineering education 3 years, metallurgy is not relevant to us, and mastering C programming. But then you just check Infosys balance sheet. It's very interesting. 99% of Infosys business is repeat business. And does Infosys sell to TCS? Hardly no. But if you go to Silicon Valley, IT companies sell to other IT companies because they specialize. So we have an IT company that's doing consulting. And so that's where I was saying the tall structures in government, vertical structures in government, wherein hardly you have echo of what people say, got merged together, then fusing with the human engagement issues. And it's a mess. mess, always. But I'm saying, maybe it's a kind of hope I would like to share. I think hope is in integrating youth and youth voice. Because seeing the demography, global demography, it's very clear. What Trump said, those countries would be the countries having large pool of young people. So diverse organization that would emerge may have it. But then would that be breaking the tall order? Dear friends, just last point. Another tall structure that needs massive tweaking is, I would say, you call it blasphemy. I dare to say, Google type of search engines. They are very good, in fact. But the Google's primary problem is it's all built on centrality. That's the Lowry page algorithm says. You get more power if you're closer to who is more powerful. But then it's tweaking all the information. And it's all built around tallest order and centrality of information. And I think with Aadhaar card, we are coming across many of these issues. So then many scientists have worked on it, social theorists have worked on it, sociologists worked on it, less economists perhaps. The point is, the information society that we are seeing across the world, do they have freedom to randomize themselves? Even then associate on the principle of dignity, equality and dignity. Dear friends, that's an important area. Here I end.
Thank you, Bino, for that provocative presentation. I think it is unconventional thinking as usual from your side. So I think it's a very interesting ideas that have come through. What I propose is there can be an inter-panel discussion for 10 to 15 minutes and then it will be open for everyone for discussion. Now I would try to take the advantage of being where I am. So I would try to, first of all, ask one or two issues that really I'm bothered about. I think it perhaps first question is related to what Professor Nagaraj and Professor Bino have stated. There is a dilemma. State and market. We are not talking about nirvana hypothesis or Harold Dempsey's. We are talking about a failure, states with failure and markets with failure. And when we talk about this kind of thing, actually the ideas goes back to 18th century with cameralist thinking. Cameralist, Justi and Adam Smith, the British classical liberal. That is one kind of dilemma that continued. Subsequently, Edgeworthian analysis and Wexelian analysis also carried through whether state is a participant or state is a catalyst. State as an interventionist or state is an agent in the market process itself. And subsequently we saw the dialogue between public finance and public choice school. So I think there is a line of thinking which throws open the strengths and as well as weaknesses of markets and state from time to time. Given this, especially, I would try to draw the attention to what Buchanan and Wagner writes in Democracy in Deficit, where they criticize the deficit financing adopted after Keynesian revolution all through, saying that orthodox normative theories must come face to face with political realities. So political presupposition becomes important for any theory building. But I do not know. I understand that institutional processes are more important and ideal theory do not exist as it is, it cannot be implemented. But then what is a great example where the theory has met the complexity of political and institutional structures? That is one question. Or ideal theories exist and one has to guard it at the implementation level from different perspective altogether. So that I think we cannot leave the dilemma as it is. There are implementation and the policy issues that keeps coming. So I believe this is an important issue which I get bothered about. So that is one issue that I think we can discuss to some extent.
I'm at a loss. I don't know what to say. Honestly, I'm not well read enough to answer with all the issues you have raised. My reading has been pretty narrow. I don't know. Maybe what I'm saying is tangential to what you say. The state and market. That's the. There are various ways of looking at it. I mean, this dilemma, I think, is not easy to solve. We have to. Let's put it this way: we have to. I mean, I don't think that every society has to find its own answer. I don't know how this economic, streams of economic thought interfaces with the political ideas. I don't know. I'm pretty well read about politics. I'm quite ignorant of politics or political theory, so I won't be able to. But in economics, I think there is this motivated the Buchanan. I think this is where I think people like Buchanan, they basically, I think, classical theorists who believe that state should live within its means. It's that state should not. See, there's a fear of state's extension in economic activity leads to curbing of private initiative, and that they see as basically infringement on freedom. And therefore that should be limited. Whereas I think I would say later scholars who see the state as not as something which constraining the individual freedom, but given the structure of the society, state may in fact liberate the society in terms of taking active intervention in society. I mean, like, suppose you have a very unequal society where the state intervenes in favor of the poor. Okay, then it may in fact be liberal. But at the same time, this need not necessarily mean that it can constrain the private initiative. Suppose if the state intervenes to stop child labor, okay, which means that the children are put in schools, and then you create human capital, and that in fact improve the overall productivity of workforce. So what can give you many examples? Therefore, it need not be seen as dichotomous, but it may be seen as one enabling the other. So, and therefore, I think the classical scholars see freedom as ultimate and as absolute. Whereas I think that those who believe the state as a necessary agent to bring about positive change in society, I think that I think there's evidence of that as well. I think the 20th century has seen that the state intervention has had positive effects. I stop here. I don't know whether I've answered your question. Maybe I have not. Okay, I stop here. And I think others can tell me.
Over from my narrative, what I'd like to submit. What is market, what is state, what is business is almost indistinguishable. Indistinguishable, because many globalizing processes were contributing to it. Of course, moreover, disruptive technological process. I'd like to share this because one hand, disruptive technologies presumably make human autonomous, including mobile phone and so on and so forth, but that's not a fact. Behind it, there's a tendency towards centralized information and there's a control part. But that control as an analytical category perhaps was never in the realm of classical or neoclassical, because there's no opportunity of seeing what that is. The kind of networks emerged, social media, for example, or other disruptive technologies, but they had no opportunity to foresee those things. Of course, there were writings. People, Herbert and a variety of people looked at it, but then they never lived through this age, which we are seeing. But then I would say one thing, then I end. Perhaps in all these spheres, there is need for non-negotiable aspects, particularly human dignity. Human dignity in human engagement, human dignity in business, or that's emerging, human dignity. But it's not. It takes time to emerge. So it's a question of engagements, academic engagement, knowledge engagement, social engagements, creating new enlightenment. Dignity, as Professor Nagaraj said, in a different way, was echoed in classical writings in the form of expansive liberties. I think Sen also mentions in his Commodities and Capabilities, citing Adam Smith, liberation, expansive liberties as complex forms of capabilities. But then the crux of the matter is the dignity. Dignity to wear what you have, to dignity one deserves, irrespective of all the context and backgrounds. But then, with the convergence of vertical structures, that's hard to come. So that's perhaps the need of enlightenment. There I end.
Thank you. I would request.
I think these are interesting questions in terms of state and markets or state versus markets or whatever. But I'm not an economist, so I'm not confounded by the theoretical frameworks of economics. So I think politics has to ultimately call the shots, because that is the purpose of the state. It is a social contract between state and society. That is what it is about. So that the social contract is about regulating the market for the social benefits that should accrue to people. I mean, that is why you believe in a state or an entity to govern, that you pay taxes and so that you can get certain benefits. I think the best example of that, of regulation of markets, is that in healthcare, for example, markets cannot operate because they will lead to tremendous inequities and market failures. And this is established globally. The only country which tries to keep pushing that markets in healthcare is the US, and it fails tremendously. It spends 20% of its GDP, still there are 30 million people who don't get access to healthcare. India, unfortunately, is trying to follow the same path. The rest of the OECD countries, healthcare is not in the market. It is, it's a state which pools all the resources and finances healthcare. Delivery can be through different mechanisms. It could be through private provision, through direct public provision, or some mix of services. But it is the regulation through pooling of resources that the state takes on as a role, as a kind of an autonomous corporation like in Canada or in many of the European countries. So I think that is the critical element. The states ultimately have to regulate market where the social contract demands. The state should not get into arenas where markets probably do better, like the hotel industry, for example. You know?
My last set of questions. One question would be for Bino, which actually right from the beginning students wanted to know about, is automation and its impact on the labour market, especially when, as we've already talked about, the component of wage has been a historical constant all through, and in many advanced economies, share of wage in GDP is actually declining. So, an inequality of a different kind is coming up in a big way. So, how exactly you look at it? And another set of questions for Duggal. Actually, there's a convergence of social sector expenditure that one finds. The earlier states, the states which used to spend a higher amount on social sector, actually there is a slowing down of expenditure in those states, and there is an increased social sector allocation by states known as empowered action group states. So the earlier Bino states, what they call. So you cited the example of Bihar and Maharashtra, but the contrasting states, how exactly, is it really bringing about some kind of convergence? Second is, we have seen the society transfers that used to happen earlier, giving way to the transfer through the state exchequer in recent times since 2014-15. The process has been reversed. So, what kind of impact do you find at the ground level because of these changes? Society transfer, now, earlier, a lot of money, earlier the money was given to, say, health society. Okay, so now 2014-15 onwards, there is a, yes, treasury. So, the society to treasury transfers, because sometimes there is a different kind of understanding that should go via the state, if federal structure is to be retained and all that. But there is a process of actually quick delivery of money and getting things done at the ground level. We believe it happens through society transfer. So sometimes actually you would have a great insight into those kind of processes. So I would request this please.
Pertinent to automation, I would like to refer to different paradigms. Such as Industry 2.0, which is more mechanizing, and Industry 3.0, which is more to do with automation. Industry 4.0, which is more like digitalization, robots taking on, the whole human element gets substituted, both in service and industry robots and service robots. In fact, referring first, I think we can start from digitalization perhaps. I guess digitalization is kind of contagious process that's shaping, which is a reality in many parts of the world. China is there. I think it's there in places like Western Europe. Germany is also producer of many robots, like Japan. So it's shaping up. But then, as far as South Asia is concerned, is digitalization taking shape in some pockets, some industries, particularly original equipment manufacturers, OEMs, from a value chain perspective? Because now I think it's a redundant thing to talk about industry, perhaps, or organization. It's more a value chain. Automobile is a classic case, where there is a value chain. Original equipment manufacturing and equipment auto component suppliers. In geographies like India, what I've been seeing from the field is original equipment manufacturers have been digitalizing more and more. One hand they are doing it. But components are not digitalizing much. Even component manufacturing can be divided into 3-4 layers. One layer is semi-digitalized, but highly automated. But also there are layers where production is hugely human-based. Lake as a sector, lake-based production is still a reality in Pune automobile cluster, classic case. So, and then I'd like to mention what's happening in terms of usage of ICT. Particularly with respect to, unorganized enterprises. Because unorganized enterprises are vital agents, vital actors in the value chain process of the economy. As per the recent data, percentage of small, micro enterprises who use ICT in their processes. For example, it includes something like extranet, intranet, LAN, or variety of convergence technologies. It's not even 10%. Of course, our demonetization was presuming people would be digital. But that's not really happening, I guess. Even now, digital platforms being used in variety of industries, service as well as manufacturing, is much, much lesser. Even we can compare that with BRICS, because comparable economies. Even if we compare, for example, classic case is National Sample Survey, social consumption data, 72nd or 73rd round, I forgot exactly. Education round. That figure is also interesting. The age group of 15 plus, less than 1/6 only use internet in India. But then in South Africa, according to India International Telecommunication Union, ITU, usage is more than 75%. Even in BRICS level, there's huge polarity. So digitalization, that's the way it's shaping. And what interesting thing about digitalization, it can prove to be counterintuitive to some of the promises made by our policy forecasters. If someone builds on human democratic dividend, that can go wrong. Because what happens now with robots coming, there is reshoring happening. Offshoring, it's not offshoring, it's reshoring. Work is coming back to erstwhile production geographies like Germany. They are reshoring. So reshoring is taking off now. As per the recent world robot data, this world robot data, that's the trend we can see. Service establishments, manufacturing establishments located in OECD countries, they are bringing back work to their home. Maybe value addition is very high, but then it also poses questions, several questions. I don't know, very naively I asked that question. Human dies, but robots never die. And who will bear that cost? If robot can become redundant, but then who is going to bury robots? In the sense, the kind of toxin comes from robot, who will be paying for? So that means no one knows how to price. No economists ever know how to price, or no accountant will ever know, or no technologist will know ever how to price a robot. Because only 5% of robots' life will be used in the production process. Because robot gets updated, because technologies are restless. Because they work for a tall structure. As per the tall structure, they have to be restless. That's the kind of innovation we are seeing. So if, as long as they remain restless, and the robots, generation 1, generation 2, redundance, obsolescence is very high, who is going to bury them? And human can be buried. So then pricing robot against pricing of human is a tricky thing. I think prices, the unit price of Indian unorganized work is much lower than what robots. So I think it's not easy for robots to penetrate to Indian value chain work. For example, garment, it's being done by homes now, not by factories here. So I think this is the emerging context, I guess, as far as digitalization is concerned.
About social sector spending, I mean, we know historically that India is a very low spender on social sector, whether it's health, education, old age, pensions, social security. I mean, that's the crux of the thing. And the prime reason is our low tax GDP ratio. I mean, with 16% tax GDP ratio, it's not possible to provide universal access to healthcare, education, and so on, because that itself, global calculations tell us you need at least 15% of GDP to do all this. So we are not even collecting that much amount totally. I mean, and just for functioning of the state, the basic functions of the state, you need at least 8 to 10% of GDP. So we have to get into the bracket of 25 to 30%. If you look at the global countries where universal access is available to the basic social sectors, that's the kind of funding you need. So we don't collect enough taxes. And we were trying to solve this issue. And I'll give you an example of what is possible. Recently, Tamil Nadu has emerged as a state where a lot of social benefits are given out. Free drugs. And drugs are available. I mean, you go to any primary health center there, people would get medicine generally. So they have transformed. I mean, not only providing social benefits, but even giving people television sets, and you're wondering where does the money come from. And it's very interesting. So we started looking at the revenue side of Tamil Nadu, and we found that, for example, tax on alcohol. You know, in Tamil Nadu, the tax on alcohol translates to 4,500 rupees per capita. In Maharashtra, it's only 1,500. So you want to tell the Maharashtra government that you increase the tax to the level of Tamil Nadu and you get 30,000 crores for health, education and social benefits extra. The deficit that you face in your social sector budget, where you don't want to prioritize that, you can actually look at Tamil Nadu and do that. This is just one example. There are many others. There's whole debate around revenues foregone, and which is 4 to 5% of GDP and so on. So that's why I said politics is important, and what is the political will to take a tax GDP ratio to 25 to 30%. So I think that is a critical element which will determine social sector spending. So the thing is that things need to be politicized. Health and education must be battle zones for fighting elections. Then you will have the state addressing these needs. And the second question about the society or treasury route, I mean, I don't think the society route, it was a big flaw that we had introduced. Because ultimately accountability is with the state and with the state institutions, and the auditor is ultimately responsible for taxes that we pay. So if it goes to the society route, then it doesn't get accounted in the state budget, it doesn't get audited, and it's therefore not accountable. So I think the treasury route should be the predominant mode of state spending.
Thank you so much. Now the floor is open for discussion. I would invite questions. So 2 to 3 questions I would take together, and then the discussion will happen. Please start.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm a student of Urban Policy and Governance at the School of Habitat Studies. And what I gather from the panel discussion, an image of my mind of the state and the market being two players playing the same game but with different rules, which makes it very difficult to spot who's playing foul. And I think one of the prime examples of this is the housing sector, where on one side the state is trying to decrease the cost of providing affordable housing, and on the other side real estate is becoming a very lucrative investment option. So, how can we come as policymakers, how can we form a consensus on the basics of non-negotiable goods and services which need to be provided and where there won't be any intervention from the market? And so how can we come to this sort of consensus so that we can have a plan of action ahead?
We'll start with this, that markets are socially constructed, so patriarchy, caste system, or even stigmatization of Muslims and exclusion of tribals in the development process, that at one level. And secondly, markets are also segregated on the line of caste, gender, ethnicity, religion. It is in this context that we have to see the role of market in certain cases where it is very effective. For example, plague in Surat. The markets had got completely haywire. It was the state which took over, which had administered price of this thing. There was strong public health measures were taken. Violators were very severely penalized, and all with the backing of the state. Though it happened in the Surat city. You know, the same Gujarat state also has a dormitory labor system where they get workers from 14, and that is supposed touted as a successful Gujarat model, where workers from around 14-15 states are coming. They are staying on the premises in the industrial zone, and they are divided with no fear of trade union. There is cheapest labor, and you have alcohol. So Gujarat is a dry state. You have a trunk full of alcohol in the factory premises. Uriya workers are watching Uriya TV channel. They are working for 12 hours. All their self-actualization takes place in the factory premises only. They have a Uriya cook who makes Uriya food. So all the workers from Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, everywhere they are separated. So that is another model. And there is no concern for occupational health and safety. There are n number of reports, human rights organizations or another leadership of Justice Suresh have submitted to the state. Nothing happened. You have a state, you don't need a comparator, because in this case, like agents bring them to the factory premises. In Sumantali scheme of Tamil Nadu state is a comparator. To the SEZ, where again dormitory system where young generation girls are employed. And same thing is repeated and replicated in Haryana, where there was a last scheme. Again, young girls used as a cheapest state. Haryana is called the last colony. So capitalism's oxygen beyond, except that it's a profit, but they derive it in a very different ways. So do we go by piecemeal approach? In each case, whether you collaborate with the state or you confront the states, we should have that kind of approach in our strategy and we need to decide taxes. My question to, I think, all of you.
Good morning, panel. Good afternoon. My question is directed at Professor Nagaraj. Actually, ma'am talked about globalized world, and so did Dr. Paul. So I guess my question is that doesn't it increase the responsibility of the state in this increasingly globalized world? Because if you regulate and the regulations go wrong, the ultimate blame is put on the state, and justifiably so. In state regulation as well, state is the ultimate, accountable entity which is there. So doesn't it increase it? So it's not state versus market or state and market, but ultimately everything boils down to accountability and robustness of regulation. And what about the state corporate nexus? Because if we talk about military industrial complexes in US, Israel and all these countries, or in India, where there's massive evidence for state corporate nexus, and that has really, penetrated into the social sector as well by international and national NGOs and a lot of other vested interests. So what can be done to actually segregate state and the markets where each holds the other entity accountable? Thank you.
One in urban economics, housing and affordable housing. I'll come back to you. So 3 questions let me take first. And would you like to urban economics housing and non-negotiables?
No, okay, fine. Before urban economic issue, I'd like to comment on the convergence of interests of all order in the business or market and all order in government, in the state and so on and so forth. But would there be a variation to this impasse? That's also a big major question one should really ponder over. But then we all know that in integration we talk about as a big danger. That is actually, it appears to be stemming from or emerging from something like what neoclassical economics has been preaching. A classic book I would like to share is Deepu, who got Nobel Prize. He was saying, I don't see any meaning in that book, But he has been saying integrating the world is through tangibles. He's very innocent, I would say, because he has been saying asset prices, volume. 3-4 information is enough to talk about autonomy and integration. Because as per Deep Root, or then Deep Root and many followers of Deep Root, economic agent is autonomous of social, political, cultural context. Then what, if you are autonomous, what makes action between you? Which is called arm's length. Through the enforcement of law, price making, prices and quantity. It works that way. That's what Deep Root actually wished by using very interesting abstract mathematical concepts. But then that became excuse for Bretton Woods institutions, corporates to give, or even the state also, to talk only about tangibles. If you say something so bit subjective, qualitative, not so tangibles, civil servants, they don't accept many of them. If you accept, state governments also say, give only presentations. Tangibles should be there. Tuck, 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 tuck. They call it data. But how data, but the question data is, the problem with data is, data exists with noise. Because if it's a time series data, no data can be freed from noise. Because what, this year's figure depended on last year's figure. Last year's figure is dependent on some other year's figure. But still they want data. Then that's why narratives also change. Last year's economic survey is a classic case. They use some big data, railway reservation, to talk about economic buoyancy. But never bothered to check what is the purpose of human travel. You buy ticket from somewhere. So noise, data with noise, rather than data with voice, often gives shape to what is called data. So I think poor innocent Deep Root was co-opted by people to say all these things. Now, is there something called subjectivity and objectivity? That itself is a question. I think there is hardly anything existing. So the co-opting, ideological, the co-opting of humble souls like not so visionary like Deep Root. Maybe Deep Root is a mathematician, that's all. That should not but create a social system of human engagement. But unfortunately, such innocent souls have been co-opted to say, this is that. So classic case is education. Education and health. But health has well been done. Education, there's a age-old confusion going. Should that generate return to participants? What is a return from education if someone goes? Or is education part of dignity? Of course, the space to live is also a question of dignity. So the dignity, so instead of Deep Root, if we say human dignity as a integrating agent, that's synchronized. Is a question. I'm just putting loudly this question. Why we have to have this fantasizing over so tangibles? Because nothing is tangible. What you have as tangible is actually noisy. Okay. And who knows how to erase noise? For example, that's a problem with data. You can't analyze FPA now, foreign direct investment. It's so tricky. And a good chunk of FPA shapes through round tripping. Country excess money goes to Y, then Z country, from Z it comes to X. So it's an accounting craft, nothing short of that. So then, that is the state of art. So I guess this some of these deeper issues also exist when it comes to that. I think housing, I don't have enough wisdom now to comment, actually.
I think if you see anything, and see, your question is housing should be non-negotiable. One can agree, but ultimately, what is negotiable or what is non-negotiable, I think it has to be decided in political process. Like you say, food for work, or say, for the, food for everyone. What is the program? Right to food. I mean, it's a political program, and then if the society accepts it through the political process, then I think it becomes a. I mean, but see, on ethical ground, I may say yes, it should be done, or for that matter, all of us here may agree to it. But will the politics allow it? Okay, when it allows, it becomes non-negotiable. So ultimately, what is negotiable, what is not negotiable, or any of the social policies, is an outcome of political process, like the child labor. In India, we have not banned child labor because politically there has not been a consensus on this. Okay, even among the very progressives, their opinion is very strict. Okay, whereas many other countries, in fact, that's how all of Western Europe, I think there was in the 20th century there was a consensus: no, children should not be working. And they made certain progress, and there we have not. So, what is negotiable, what is not negotiable, is a political process. Fine. Secondly, the state and capital. It's I mean, I don't have any new insight into this, but I think I mean, if you go by Weber, the state comes into being precisely to promote capitalism. Right? See, we are not in a libertarian state where you say there is no only the market takes care of everything. No, in fact, capitalism requires state to promote accumulation. Okay, and it takes different forms in different times. And I mean, you gave good example of how in the present context, you know, they want to promote capitalism, they want to promote economic growth, and it takes different forms. Okay, so this has historically happened. Okay, therefore, the state and market go together. And in fact, the bureaucracy today, in the current scholarship sees bureaucracy as opposed to state, it is historically incorrect. In fact, bureaucracy came to ensure that the capitalist accumulation happens in a very regular systematic fashion. But as society has progressed, as democracy has strengthened, and also capitalism is not a linear process, it has gone through huge cycles, and then we have seen great inflation. And that is what made, if you leave it to the market forces, state, the capitalism will not survive, and state will have to go beyond just enabling accumulation, but also has to restrain accumulation to ensure that the capitalism survives for a longer time. And that's how the constraints on capitalism are built over time. And also in this process, democracy is very important. How democracy, if you see as basically a voice of the people, and that has put restraints on capital via the state. Okay, so therefore, this to say today that state and as often is done, state and accumulation as opposite is basically a very historical way of looking at it. But how it is happening today, it can vary across states. I don't know whether I've answered the question. The third question, just so what could you just repeat the last point which you said? I just forgot.
Effect of globalization on responsibilities of the state.
As it increases.
Yeah. See, this is right. See, this is where I think this is not a linear process. I find it's a very I use the preferred term which is not very common these days. It's a very dialectical process. Okay, it increases sometimes and decreases sometimes. See, put it this way. Let's just give a very simple example. When we said, look, the state had overextended and we should leave it to market forces. I mean, if you look at the whole whatever, the free market enterprise or the revolution which happened, starting with Thatcher and Reagan, okay, when this happened, okay, what it meant was, in principle, was the role of the state in market will go down, okay, but has it really happened? Probably not, okay. In fact, you see, very often the state has come back not as a producer, but as a regulator state, okay, and also even in the social sector, the newer demands have been put on the state, and which has, this is the reason why, if you look at the again going by Wagner's the role of state in market in GDP, in fact, even in the advanced countries, the size of public sector in GDP has not very much declined, even in the advanced countries. It really shows that state is not just inefficiently spending money, but state is probably doing certain things which is what the society wants, and also that its composition may change, but the state roles remains quite active. And that's what it shows. In fact, very few countries, even in the US, it has not really declined the percentage of GDP contributed by the state to the total GDP. But it's a dialectical process. If the state's role declines in a particular fashion, it comes up with something else. Maybe it takes a different form and different terms. Okay. Therefore, I think the notion that globalization has led to a kind of a linear, it's a kind of a flip-flop, that this globalization has increased, state role has declined. I think that's a very crude and simplistic notion. The state's role continues. I don't know whether I answered the question. This is my answer. Okay, thank you.
So, before I take the next set of questions, just I would also like to add to this particular point, the overlap of interest between state and the capital. Obviously, the size of the state, how much the ceiling is going to be. On that, there is a lesser known paper by Schumpeter, The Rise of the Fiscal State. So, where he says that actually, from where the state receives its fiscal vigor, from the taxable surplus that the corporates have. So naturally there is very, very integral overlapping interest between the state and the capital. So that is an interesting paper to understand the dynamics of the overlapping interest. So next set of questions here. Yeah, one. Please raise your hands so that I can quickly come to you. Okay, Paras first.
My question is to you. One of the issues that came out was the low tax GDP ratio that India has compared to even BRICS nation. Ma'am, do you think in a foreseeable future, GST could be able to somehow eliminate or improve the existing condition?
Okay, I think we can have discussions beyond this. You should listen to the panelists, but anyway, I'll respond to you. Next questions?
So, what I see from this state market and actually people debate is they are interacting in a space. Basically, state has its own space market and people has its own space. So there are different economic framework as Dr. Nagaraj has said, that in public choice theory, self-interest is the guiding factor of all three, where people are like deciding which state and which market delivery system they have to choose. In second aspect, like in welfare economics, they say state has to play an integral role. Like LPG thing that they said market has to play. The market is independent and it has to play the major role. So my question is, the ambient contraction is measured by your social economic indicators, like what is your HDI or hunger index, different indicators are there, how they are performing. So my question here is, what is the ideal space and what could be the indicators of these to govern? Like it will be like your macroeconomic data or through external agents which are guiding this interaction space. So what could be the ideal thing for that?
Okay, I'm told this should be the last question by the organizers. So this question is going to be taken by...
As I said, this is where reading history is important. Okay, I think there is, of course, if you if you talk to an economist, if you talk to a public economist, the only thing is optimality conditions. Okay, I'm not sure how useful that is. Maybe it is, but history shares that there are varieties of possibilities. That's important to understand. Also, even the relationship with state and capital, what do you call the varieties of capitalism? See, this is where I think interesting to understand. You can have different possibilities, and maybe the outcomes are something similar. Okay, and therefore, which works for you? I don't know. I mean, that's something which works for a particular social formation. Okay, I don't know which is correct, but it can vary. Okay, like put it this way, like US is as you know, US is usually said, look, it's a free enterprise economy. Okay, its social indicators are poor, right? Compared to Europe, and we always say good things about Europe, and especially so about Scandinavian countries, which we all, I think, all social democrats would usually say very good things about Cuba. Okay, but honestly, let's look at it. So, Europe also, or especially the Scandinavian countries, are close to immigration. Or Cuba, I mean, just as Ravi said, okay, Cuba, in fact, all the left liberals were enamored by Cuba, but Cuba subsisted on the subsidy from the Soviet Union at that time. Okay, once that subsidy lost, and Cuba lost. See, what was Cuba doing? Cuba was supplying sugar to Soviet Union, okay, and Russia was buying it at inflated prices, okay, for political reasons. Okay, and therefore Cuba used its resources to develop social science, that everything went fine. Okay, and they did a good job. In fact, the Cuban doctors are very well known in that time. Okay, but once that Soviet Union collapsed, Cuba collapsed automatically with a bang. Okay, so therefore, all these ideal types we talk about, which we say good things or bad things, they have a particular context, and there are good things and bad things about each of them. If you say American system is a horrible system, in fact, socially, as you often left liberals would like to say, including myself. Okay. But you must also see, US is an open system. It is far more open to immigration than any other country. And so, the situation, we all eulogize rightly, the Scandinavian countries, but Scandinavian countries are most close to immigration. Okay, so they have developed systems which is good for them. What is good for us, we have to develop ourselves. There's nothing like ideal or perfect as you're looking for. We have to see what is good and what is politically feasible. And politically feasible need not be taken as given, but its frontiers can be extended depending upon the political forces at work within the country. And I will stop here.
So regarding GST, I will quickly respond and maybe sorry, just. So I think at this moment, if the revenue neutral rate is there has been modifications. We do not know what exactly is going to happen. It's slightly uncertain at this moment. But if the claimed benefits of GST would come by in terms of increased GDP, and if the business environment improves, then perhaps one can reap benefit out of it. But at this moment, as the initial scheme was regarding the revenue neutral, so we expected revenue neutral thing. There is no benefit that one would expect in a revenue neutral system. Thank you. So I really thank Professor Nagaraj, Professor Duggal, and Bino for coming in a very short time, and really thank you so much for having me here, and all the best for the rest of the program that we have. Thank you so much.
We're open to questions outside this room, so if anybody has pressing questions, we can still answer. Also, we have a token of appreciation for our panelists. Ma'am, let's start from there. Nice press. Thank you panel, thank you audience.